He becomes the most feared terrorist, but they don't know that he is on a mission to find the mysterious mushroom that can cure all diseases. Without warning, a colossal explosion shattered Tokyo, leaving an immense crater in its wake. In its aftermath, a devastating affliction spread indiscriminately, consuming both the living and the inanimate. The rusting disease ravaged entire cities and forests, reducing Japan to an arid wasteland, with only a handful of settlements shielded from the corrosive winds by towering walls. Survivors were not spared, their bodies corroded slowly, inching toward an inevitable demise. As the old world crumbled, a dystopian cyberpunk society emerged where fear of mushrooms took hold. People believed their spores propagated the rusting disease, prompting the government to outlaw their cultivation and trade, yet defiant individuals disregarded these edicts. Branded as mushroom terrorists by authorities, these rebels call themselves mushroom keepers, seeding gargantuan fungi wherever they roam. Among them, the most infamous is the red-haired Bisco, feared as the man-eater Bisco. Legends whisper of his bow, capable of conjuring massive mushrooms with a single arrow. Feared and relentlessly pursued, he is now the most wanted man alive. A bandaged monk approaches immigration to enter a mama, where the officer recounts the legend of man-eater Bisco, mocking him as the worst kind of human. After demanding the monk's papers, he inspects his luggage. The monk calmly states it holds the corpses of his brethren, whom he is escorting on their final pilgrimage. Uneasy, the officer orders his assistant to check, but when the monk mentions keeping deadly centipedes inside to slow decomposition, the officer recoils and waves him through. As the monk turns, a bow peeks from his shoulder, triggering the officer's suspicion. He discreetly signals his assistant to fetch a gun while stalling. Sensing the ruse, the monk rips off his bandages, revealing himself as man-eater Bisco. Dodging a gunshot, he fires an arrow into the gearbox, demanding respect for his name. Instantly, colossal mushrooms erupt, obliterating the control building. The officer and his assistant flee just in time. Alarms blare as security forces mobilize, unleashing war hippos to apprehend the fugitive. Wait, hippos as they charge. Bisco pulls back the cloth on his luggage, revealing his mentor Jabby and a massive crab. Their true ride. Climbing onto the crab, they flee while the automated hippos unleash relentless mortar fire. Bisco fires 2 arrows, massive mushrooms erupting from the struck hippos, halting them. A third presses forward, bombarding the crab, but its armored shell remains unscathed. Irritated, the crab retaliates, swatting the hippo aside. More hippos close in. Bisco tells Jabby to hold them off for 10 seconds as he devises an escape. With Jabby and the crab holding the line, he readies a special arrow and fires it into the ground. The colossal mushroom erupts from the sand and Jabby commands the crab to scale it. Just then, a hippo lunges at Bisco from behind, jaws snapping inches from his head. But this lunatic simply deadlifts the beast and hurls it aside effortlessly. The towering mushroom beneath them suddenly surges upward, launching Bisco's group beyond the wall with its explosive force. That night, as they rest in the desert, Bisco notices Jabby's worsening condition. He insists that ordinary medical mushrooms won't suffice. They must find sabui, the legendary rust-eating fungus, to cure the disease. The old man, however, exhales wearily, stating he has lived long enough and no longer concerns himself with borrowed time. Bisco snaps, refusing to battle through cities and checkpoints just for Jabby to surrender to fate. But the old man chuckles, praising Bisco for surpassing him in every aspect of mushrooming, except medicine-making. He assures Bisco that even if he perishes tomorrow, his student will be just fine. Furious, Bisco scolds him for speaking so casually about death. Frustrated, he retreats beside his giant crab when out of nowhere, a missile hurtles toward him. Instinct kicks in. He draws his bow and obliterates it midair with a pinpoint shot. Moments later, the attacker emerges, a grotesque, weaponized slug engineered into a flying war machine. What kind of abomination is this? Jabby rushes over, urging Bisco to take cover under the crab before the creature unleashes an acid barrage. As Bisco takes aim, Jabby warns him, taking down a military-grade war beast with just a bow won't be that easy. The helicopter launches another missile, and Bisco deflects it, despite being jolted by an electric eel's bite. But the shock momentarily slows him, leaving him exposed to a hail of bullets. Before he can react, Jabby throws himself in the line of fire. As the old man crumples to the ground, Bisco's fury ignites. He looses an arrow straight through the helicopter, killing the mutated snail and unleashing a surge of mushrooms across its surface. The masked pilot, stunned, barely manages to eject before the aircraft plummets. Wasting no time, Bisco urges his crab forward at full speed, racing toward Amama in a desperate bid to find a doctor before it's too late. Meanwhile, the finest physician in Amama City is Milo, a delicate yet sharp-witted young man whose clinic stands beside the city brothel. Charging only modest fees, he ensures no greedy landlord breathes down his neck. His selfless care earns him the city's deep admiration. Even the courtesans next door offer themselves to him, yet beneath his soft exterior lies an unyielding resolve, and he dismisses their advances without hesitation. After wrapping up his work, he visits his favorite food stall to buy lunch for his ailing sister, stricken with rust disease. Alongside alligator and crab sandwiches, he discreetly inquires about something rarer. The vendor, cautious, hands him a few contraband mushrooms smuggled in recently, warning him of the dire consequences if caught. While the shopkeeper fears little for himself, he knows that without Dr. Milo, the city is as good as lost. At home, Milo's sister Pau awaits him. A formidable captain of the city guards, she exudes strength despite battling the advanced stages of rust disease. He hands her the sandwiches before immersing himself in his latest experiment, attempting to concoct a new remedy using the contraband mushrooms. Pau warns him of the dangers, but Milo is willing to defy every risk to save her. His initial attempts fail, prompting him to return to the food stall where the vendor had promised rarer specimens. Just as he acquires them, a slum urchin snatches the package and bolts. Lacking the endurance for a chase, Milo struggles to keep up. Fortuitously, the thief circles back, intent on further mugging him. However, upon glimpsing Milo's delicate features, the boy mistakes him for a girl and hesitates, his inner simp overriding his intent. Seizing the moment, Milo reclaims his parcel and even tends to the boy's injuries. Moved by the gesture, the young thief departs with newfound respect. Just then, Governor Kuro arrives, his presence as unsettling as his motives. A scheming opportunist, he propositions Milo, offering resources and rare materials in exchange for his allegiance. He urges him to abandon his futile experiments and join his ranks, but Milo refuses outright. He insists on staying in the city, treating patients at minimal cost to amass goodwill. Though deep down he dreads Kuro discovering the illicit mushrooms in his possession. Before the tension escalates, an arrow strikes the ground ahead, erupting into a towering mushroom. Chaos ensues as mercenaries in bunny masks unleash gunfire on Bisco, the marksman responsible. Unfazed, he weaves through bullets and missiles, toppling helicopters with precise mushroom-laced arrows. His strategic shots blanket the city in massive fungi, disorienting both mercenaries and city guards. As Bisco dashes through the streets, he momentarily crosses paths with Milo before a colossal mushroom launches him skyward. Stunned yet exhilarated, Milo realizes he has just encountered a real-life mushroom keeper. Until now merely a legend. Without hesitation, he rushes home to share the revelation with his sister. As captain of the city guards, Pau is far from pleased to hear that mushroom-wielding terrorists have infiltrated her city. Determined to defend her home, she declares that they've trespassed into the wrong territory. Milo pleads with her, warning that in her deteriorating state she's in no condition to fight. But Pau refuses to back down. Her duty to protect both the city and her brother outweighs any personal affliction. Milo, unwilling to let her risk her life, tries to stop her, only for Pau to swiftly render him unconscious with a well-placed karate chop. When he finally regains consciousness, he refocuses on crafting medicine using the newly acquired mushrooms. However, an unfamiliar voice suddenly cuts through the silence. Spinning around, Milo finds himself face to face with Bisco, his imposing figure standing over the unconscious Jabby, lying motionless on the floor. Milo stammers, struggling to form a coherent question about Bisco's sudden arrival. Unfazed, Bisco simply commands him to tend to the old man. He explains that he interrogated 3 individuals, and all unanimously deemed Milo the finest doctor, leading him here. Handing over a mushroom imbued with medicinal properties, he dismisses the others as merely edible. Milo consents to prepare the remedy, busily grinding the mushrooms. Meanwhile, Bisco spots masked mercenaries lurking outside. They notice him as well, firing a warning shot and demanding his surrender under threat of being riddled with bullets. Unfazed, Bisco retaliates, declaring Milo his hostage. Any reckless move would cost the city's most revered physician his life, yet the mercenaries remain indifferent, and immediately unleash a hail of gunfire. Bisco swiftly shields Milo and Jabby from the barrage. He dryly remarks that the city's concern for its famed doctor appears non-existent. Realizing capture is imminent, he opts for destruction, instructing Milo to hold Jabby. With precise shots, his arrows embed into the walls. As the masked assailants storm in, an explosion of rapidly sprouting mushrooms engulfs them. Meanwhile, Bisco grabs Milo and dashes to safety. Milo erupts in frustration over the destruction of his lab, but Bisco dismisses his complaints, insisting there was no alternative. Spotting a patrolling helicopter, he fires diversionary arrows in a different direction to mislead it. He then urges Milo to relocate somewhere secure for the treatment, leading them into the sewers. Elsewhere, the pilot of the snail helicopter is dragged before Kuro by the bunny-masked mercenaries. Having hired her to eliminate Bisco, Kuro is visibly displeased with her failure. Despite wielding a military-grade aircraft, she couldn't eliminate a single man. The pink-haired pilot defends herself, stating she successfully downed the old man, but that Bisco was an entirely different beast. His arrow even punctured her reinforced helicopter. Skeptical yet unfazed, Kuro devises an alternative strategy. He orders his forces to cut off Bisco's escape routes while dispatching the pilot and additional troops to track and capture him. In the sewers, Milo treats Jabby, astonished that the old man endured 6 machine gun rounds and still clings to life. He informs Bisco that he'll administer the medicine and extract the bullets, but Jabby's survival hinges on his own resilience. As Bisco prepares to confront their pursuers, Milo stops him, warning that venturing out in his condition is a death sentence. Bisco dismisses the concern, but Milo, firm in his duty as a doctor, refuses to let anyone die on his watch. A brief tension-laden exchange unfolds, one that would make BL enthusiasts swoon, before Bisco concedes, allowing Milo to stitch his wounds. With a rare moment of gratitude, he thanks Milo before heading out. As Bisco clashes with the bunny-masked mercenaries, Poe receives alarming intel. An enormous mushroom has erupted at her brother's base. Enraged, she resolves to personally take Bisco down. Bisco swiftly dispatches the bunny-masked foes, pinning the pink-haired girl beneath him. As he tears off her mask, she pleads for mercy, offering eternal servitude in exchange for her life. Before he can react, Poe approaches on her bike, launching off a ramp to reach the rooftop. Bisco fires an arrow. She deflects it with her metal staff, yet the impact spawns a mushroom that devours her bike. Undeterred, she charges forward, hurling Bisco into a wall with a single swing. He retaliates, firing another arrow that pierces her staff, signaling that this battle will not be easily won. Meanwhile, deep in the sewer, Milo completes Jabby's treatment, administering an artificial blood transfusion. Though the procedure may stabilize him, Milo fears his time is limited. Suddenly, Jabby stirs, acknowledging his fate with calm resolve. Rising to his feet, he commends Milo's skill, surprising the young doctor. Milo demands to know who Jabby truly is, but the old man simply calls himself Bisco's mentor. He then reveals that mushrooms thrive by consuming rust and are humanity's only weapon against the disease ravaging the world. Milo isn't shocked. He had already theorized as much. Impressed, Jabby listens as Milo explains that after the rust epidemic, many species perished, while others adapted. He had long suspected that some life form evolved to feed on rust or even neutralize it. Jabby affirms that mushrooms are precisely that organism. He further explains that all mushroom keepers seek the legendary sabaku, a mythical fungus capable of eradicating rust entirely from both living beings and objects. Meanwhile, Bisco taunts Pow, commending her skill with a rod and slyly suggesting she demonstrate the same finesse with his iron one. Enraged, Pow reveals herself as the captain of the city guards, ordering him to surrender or die. Bisco smirks, challenging her to make good on her threat. Pow lunges without hesitation. They trade blows, and Bisco marvels at Pow's agility despite her late-stage rusting disease. She, however, scoffs at his praise, dismissing him as a mushroom terrorist who spreads rust wherever he treads. Dodging her next strike, Bisco retorts that she should educate herself. Mushrooms don't spread rust, they devour it. Pow remains unconvinced, challenging him to prove it by saving their nation. Bisco asserts that he intends to, but people like her obstruct him and cast him as the villain. Tired of the argument, Pow snaps, while Bisco quips that he's tired of seeing her without makeup. Seizing her bike, he hurls it at her, but she counters with a powerful kick, sending it back. Mid-air, the bike erupts in flames, the explosion blasting Bisco across the battlefield. He crashes into a towering bowling pin, toppling it on impact. Pow strides toward him, demanding he confess. He's here to spread rust through mushroom spores and exact vengeance for the persecution of mushroom keepers. Bisco dismisses the accusation, stating he seeks sabaku, the ultimate rust-consuming mushroom, to save his mentor. He urges Pow to stand down. He has no quarrel with her or her city, but she refuses, smirking. Bisco remarks that his business here is already settled. He mentions meeting a skilled doctor, Milo, and notes Pow's resemblance to him. When he asks if they're related, Pow snaps, demanding to know what he did to her brother. Teasingly, Bisco asked what she'd do if he had harmed Milo. Enraged, she unleashes her full strength, obliterating a giant bowling pin, but Bisco evades. She attacks again, but her staff proves useless. Mushrooms have already infested it. Furious, she shouts his name, only for Bisco to drive a kick into her stomach. Launching her backward, an arrow follows, striking true. Pow blacks out, collapsing into his arms. Bisco heads back to the sewers, only to hear a voice ordering him to drop the hostage and turn around. He sets Pow down and lunges at the source, only to find Jabby grinning at his prank. Irritated, Bisco scolds the old man for startling him, but quickly grows emotional upon seeing his recovery. Milo rushes in, relieved that Bisco survived and grateful for saving Jabby. He offers repayment but freezes upon spotting his unconscious sister. As he props her against the wall, he struggles to believe Bisco defeated her. Bisco advises him to use the same medicine he administered to Jabby. Milo injects it, and Pow's strained expression eases as relief washes over her. Jabby urges Bisco to flee before the sea guards arrive. Bisco agrees, but Jabby insists on staying behind to buy him time. Bisco protests, but Jabby reminds him he's in no condition for a long journey. Bisco argues that leaving him behind is pointless. Without Jabby, he can't synthesize medicine from the sabaku mushrooms. Jabby glances at Milo, who immediately pleads to join, assuring them he can craft the medicine Bisco seeks. Bisco scoffs, doubting a city-bred doctor could last 2 days in the desert. Milo, undeterred, vows to take any risk to save his sister. Reluctantly, Bisco accepts him as a partner, warning that mushroom keepers always work in pairs, like Sith lords, and when one dies, the other soon follows. Just then, Jabby discerns a contingent of city guards approaching and swiftly unleashes a volley of mushroom arrows, creating a diversion that grants Bisco and Milo an opportunity to escape. Bisco inquires about Milo's intentions regarding his sister, to which Milo responds with unwavering resolve. She will manage on her own. He has left behind numerous medicinal ampules for her, and gently clasps his bracelet around her wrist, delivering a heartfelt farewell speech so saccharine that it nearly induces second-hand embarrassment in Bisco. Without hesitation, Bisco seizes Milo and dashes away, warning that any delay will bring their journey to an untimely end. As they sprint toward the northern gate, they are met with an impassable blockade of city guards. Reinforcements swiftly close in from behind, trapping them in a tightening vice. Fortunately, Jabby remains vigilant, providing cover. In a daring maneuver, Bisco looses an arrow at the bridge, triggering the eruption of a colossal mushroom that propels them beyond the city walls. Thus their odyssey begins. Yet instead of heading north in pursuit of the elusive sabaku mushroom, Bisco unexpectedly veers eastward. Milo struggles to keep pace and sarcastically questions whether Bisco suffers from Zor syndrome, a condition that impairs one's sense of direction. Unamused, Bisco curtly tells him to shut up, asserting that he has never been wrong in his life. He is merely searching for his steed, Sunam. They arrive at a rare expanse of verdant land untouched by the creeping decay of rust. Milo becomes enthralled by the drifting spheres of vegetation known as driftweed, a species that has adapted to absorb sunlight by day and emit a gentle luminescence by night. Bisco yanks him away, reminding him sternly that this is no leisurely excursion. Forging ahead, Bisco strides forward, but as Milo attempts to follow, a sudden wave of dizziness overtakes him, and he collapses. Without hesitation, Bisco allows him to recuperate inside an abandoned car before presenting him with spike lizards as sustenance. Milo recoils in disgust at the sight, but Bisco roasts them and bluntly instructs him to swallow them whole, warning that their entrails carry an unbearable bitterness. After consuming the lizards, Milo informs Bisco that Jabby may have no more than a month left to live. Given that time frame, reaching the northern region and returning on foot is an impossibility. Bisco, unfazed, retorts that he is well aware he's not an idiot. Producing a map, he lays out his strategy, utilizing an abandoned railway that will cut their travel time to just 2 days. Milo's expression shifts to alarm upon hearing this. He warns that old railways are infested with ravenous iron rats, creatures capable of reducing a healthy man to bare bones in mere seconds. Even with Bisco's strength, fending off a swarm would be insurmountable. However, Bisco dismisses his concerns, stating plainly that he won't be facing them alone. At that moment, a massive crab claw breaches the earth and Bisco whistles sharply. With a redounding crash, the steel crab bursts from the ground. Bisco reassures Milo, instructing him not to fear. This creature is like a brother to him. He assists Milo onto its back, explaining that it gravitates toward cooler environments, which is why he sought it here. Moreover, with its immense speed and resilience, they will have nothing to fear from the iron rats or any other lurking threats within the mines. Milo marvels at the breathtaking view from the crab's back, but his attempt at a friendly greeting is met with indifference. The crab promptly seizes him and hurls him aside. Bisco bursts into laughter as Milo, battered but determined, scrambles to his feet. Tossing him a spare set of clothes, Bisco remarks that he should at least look the part of a mushroom keeper. Undeterred, Milo cautiously approaches the crab, which remains skeptical of his presence. He earnestly attempts to earn its trust before climbing aboard once more, only to be unceremoniously flung aside again. Resigned to his fate, he trudges behind the crab for a time. When Bisco eventually urges him to mount and learn the art of crab riding, he is sent flying yet again. This cycle repeats itself several times, and by nightfall, Milo is utterly dejected. Seeing his frustration, Bisco reassures him that with enough time and familiarity, the crab will come to accept him as a friend. The following day, as Bisco meticulously prepares a special concoction capable of inducing instant colossal mushroom growth, Milo remains locked in a futile struggle to control the crab. The unruly creature moves at its own whim, nearly colliding with a passing girl. Milo barely manages to halt it in time. However, the abrupt stop sends him soaring through the air. Amused, the girl offers to teach him the art of crab riding. As it turns out, she is none other than the cunning mercenary who had previously slipped from Kuro's grasp. This duplicitous daughter of A seizes the opportunity to steal the crab and make her escape. Fortunately, Bisco catches sight of the commotion and swiftly retaliates, firing a mushroom arrow that sends her tumbling from the creature's back. Upon spotting him, she immediately bolts, prompting Bisco to loose a volley of arrows in pursuit. Meanwhile, Milo shifts his focus to tending the crab's injuries, which he inadvertently caused by pulling the reins too tightly. To Bisco's astonishment, Milo effortlessly gains the creature's trust, coaxing it into obedience. A feat Bisco likens to skipping straight to second base with a crab, considering how long it took him to reach that level of rapport. Later that night they stumble upon an old war memorial and decide to take refuge there, only to discover it is already occupied. Bisco immediately recognizes the intruder as the crab thief from earlier, but as she turns to face them, water spilling from every orifice, Milo senses something is gravely wrong. Acting swiftly, he helps her vomit, yet she continues to choke. Something is lodged inside her stomach. Without hesitation, Milo presses his lips to hers in a deep, forceful maneuver, extracting a grotesquely large worm from within. Bisco crushes the writhing creature underfoot, demanding to know what in the hell it is. Milo grimly identifies it as a balloon worm. In the past, slavers force-fed their captives its eggs, administering daily medicine to prevent hatching, ensuring escape was impossible. The method persists today, now used on prisoners, and the culprit behind this particular torment was none other than Kuro. Once she's finished cursing Kuro, the girl, introducing herself as Tyrell, grows wary of Bisco. He scoffs, insisting she first thank the doctor who just saved her life. Tyrell, however, remains skeptical, declaring that no one rescues a young and beautiful girl without expecting something in return. She begins stripping, seductively inviting Milo to place his own balloon worm inside her. Unfazed, Milo calmly rebuffs her, stating that he saved her simply because he is a doctor, and saving lives is his duty. Bisco eyes Tyrell and remarks that she resembles a merchant, inquiring whether she has any provisions. Taken aback that they weren't after her body, Tyrell decides to engage in business. She displays her assortment of food supplies, but Bisco asks for something simple, like dry bread, cheap yet satiating. Scoffing, Tyrell mocks him as a penniless fool, but Milo, unfazed, purchases a packet of biscuits for them to share. As they settle down to eat, Tyrell nonchalantly discards a container of gasoline, reasoning that no one will come to buy it anytime soon. Later that night, Bisco is jolted awake by violent tremors, immediately noticing Milo's absence from his bedding. As he scans his surroundings, Tyrell suddenly lunges at him, pinning him down. The realization dawns. A colossal mantis shrimp concealed beneath the war memorial has stirred from its slumber. It sustains itself on gasoline, and the very gallon Tyrell discarded the night before was enough to rouse the behemoth from its dormancy. Sensing the impending danger faster than anyone else, Milo surges ahead at full speed atop the crab with the colossal mantis shrimp relentlessly pursuing him. Bisco and Tyrell emerge from their shelter, realizing they are in no position to assist as the behemoth bombards them with relentless cannon fire. Bisco notices the mines looming nearby and immediately recognizes the catastrophic risk. If the mantis shrimp reaches that vicinity, its relentless assaults will undoubtedly trigger a devastating explosion. He urgently calls out to Milo, instructing him to halt the creature by striking its head. However, Milo hesitates, doubting his own ability. Bisco urges him to have faith in himself before commanding the crab to launch a direct assault on the mantis shrimp's forehead. Summoning his resolve, Milo takes the risk, directing the crab to strike the gargantuan beast squarely between its eyes. The crab springs into the air, landing a precise blow that momentarily stuns the creature. As Milo touches down, Bisco hurls Tyrell toward him before propelling himself skyward. With unwavering precision, he looses a powerful arrow directly at the mantis shrimp's forehead, delivering a fatal shot. Instantly, a vast spread of mushrooms erupts across the lifeless carcass, marking their victory. With the battle concluded, Bisco breathes a sigh of relief, knowing that the mines and railways remain intact. However, in a cruel twist of fate, the slain mantis shrimp fires a final desperate shot directly into the mines, engulfing them in flames. Stunned, Bisco watches in disbelief, realizing that their only option now is to take the arduous long route. The following morning, Bisco awakens to the sound of Milo's distress. Tyrell has vanished, taking his money with her. Initially enraged, Bisco resolves to track her down and make her pay, but Milo soon discovers that she has left behind a cache of supplies in exchange. Alongside it, she leaves a note advising Milo to partner with her should Bisco meet his demise. With no other choice, Bisco and Milo press on toward the north, only to encounter a vast, desolate white desert. As their provisions dwindle, exhaustion and hunger overtake them. Just as their desperation peaks, they spot a wild watermelon and sprint toward it, only for a young boy to snatch it up first. Upon seeing a fearsome redhead barreling toward him, the boy panics and bolts at full speed. Bisco remains unfazed by the boy's age and seizes him, demanding that he surrender the watermelon. Before he can react further, a bullet strikes the ground near his feet. Looking up, he spots a masked boy brandishing a gun, flanked by a group of similarly armed children. They accuse Bisco and Milo of being kidnappers sent by Kuro to abduct them. Bisco scoffs, asking, "Who the hell is Kuro?" Milo explains that Kuro is the governor of Amama, notorious for his cruelty and erratic whims. Bisco assures the children that he has no ties to Kuro and even offers to purchase food from them, flaunting his money as proof. However, the leader remains unconvinced, firing another warning shot while declaring that he doesn't trust a word from a redhead. Irritated by the blatant prejudice, Bisco swiftly produces his wanted poster flaunting the $1 million bounty on his head. He tells them that if they escort him to a mama, they'll have all the wealth they desire. The children quickly abandon their hostility, arresting Bisco and Milo on the spot. While Bisco smirks, satisfied that his ploy worked, Milo is less enthused. Still, he decides to make the most of the situation, charming a girl with his ditty Riz. The children escort Bisco and Milo into their settlement, dominated by a colossal iron statue that they revere as a relic from space. Strangely, the town is inhabited solely by children, who promptly separate and imprison Bisco and Milo to prevent any chance of escape. Milo finds himself confined with Lily Plum, who brings him food and even unshackles him. Seizing the moment, he inquires about the absence of adults in the settlement. Plum solemnly explains that they all departed in pursuit of work, leaving only the children behind to fend for themselves. As they converse, Milo notices scaly patches on her hand and instinctively leans in for a closer look. Plum casually reveals that it's the rust disease, something she has endured since childhood. Alarmed, Milo questions who diagnosed her, and she recounts that Kuro's men visited the town, informing them that everyone was afflicted. Since the treatment was prohibitively expensive, the adults had no choice but to leave in search of employment. Milo seethes with anger upon hearing this, recognizing that the affliction is unmistakably not rust. Without hesitation, he unveils the truth to Plum. Meanwhile, Bisco partakes in the meal offered by the children, and is taken aback. Their sustenance surpasses his own. His gaze then locks onto an exquisite harpoon mounted on the wall, and his interest piques. The children's leader reveals that it belonged to his late father, who was slain by Kuro's forces. He preserves it as a perpetual reminder of his vendetta. However, Bisco urges him to relinquish the weapon, asserting that he could wield it far more effectively. Nuts levels his firearm at Bisco in response, but before he can act, the children's jubilant voices call him outside, eager to showcase their miraculous recovery. Intrigued, Nuts steps out to investigate, entrusting another child with the task of guarding Bisco. Seizing the moment, Bisco captivates the young boy with enthralling tales of his exploits, demonstrating an impressive depth of knowledge. The child harbors no fear toward him, as a mushroom keeper once saved his life. In gratitude, he offers Bisco a map of the northern area. Suddenly, an urgent need arises, and the boy dashes toward the restroom, hastily instructing Bisco not to escape. Bisco merely smirks as he effortlessly snaps the rusted iron chains. Meanwhile, Milo has successfully eradicated the shell disease from all the children and meticulously documented the medicinal formula for future use. When they ask how they can express their gratitude, Milo requests Bisco's release. While most of the children readily agree, Nuts remains adamant, insisting that they must claim the bounty on Bisco's head to secure weapons for defending themselves against the imminent threat of the airborne blowfish. Speak of the devil, and the monstrous blowfish promptly descend upon the town. As the emergency sirens wail, the townsfolk rush outside to confront the menace. The children unleash a barrage of gunfire at the colossal airborne fish, but their aim is abysmal, akin to fledgling stormtroopers in training, failing to land a single shot. One of the fish seizes the boy assigned to watch over Bisco, throwing the town into chaos. In that moment, Bisco makes a dramatic entrance, propelling himself skyward using his mushroom catapult technique. Armed with a stolen harpoon, he cleaves the beast in two, rescuing the captive boy before systematically annihilating the remaining flying fish with precision. Once the skirmish concludes, he summons his colossal crab and makes his way to Milo, urging him to climb aboard. Plum pleads with Milo to remain in town until she comes of age, but he dismisses her, suggesting she seek another guardian. Abruptly, Nuts hurls the harpoon toward Bisco, insisting he take it along. Before long, Bisco and Milo traverse a vast snow-laden expanse, their provisions woefully insufficient to sustain them. Suddenly, Milo discerns a plume of black smoke billowing in the distance, but Bisco's gaze fixes on something far more enticing, a plump, succulent rabbit. Readying his fingers for a precise shot, he prepares to strike, but Milo seizes the opportunity to showcase his archery prowess. His arrow, however, veers off target, prompting Bisco to scoff, branding him an unskilled novice. Then, without warning, the arrow detonates, unleashing a viscous web that ensnares the rabbit. Milo smugly informs Bisco that he engineered a specialized arrow designed to entrap its target even in the event of a misfire, yet Bisco stubbornly refuses to acknowledge his ingenuity. Shortly thereafter, they spot a peculiar pole protruding from the snow. As Bisco retrieves it, the frozen figure of Tyrell emerges, encased in ice. Without hesitation, they thaw her out and bring her to the shelter of a cave, where Milo gravely informs her that she would have perished within 10 minutes had they not intervened. Unmoved, she responds with indifference, prompting Bisco to bristle with irritation, demanding if this is truly the gratitude she offers to those who just saved her life. Regardless, Milo shifts the conversation, inquiring how she managed to arrive ahead of them. Tyrell nonchalantly reveals that she commandeered the helicopter stationed at the war memorial to gain an advantage, only for an anti-aircraft tank to intercept and bring her down. Bisco remarks that such an outcome was inevitable, as karma is a ruthless force, and Tyrell has accumulated more than her fair share of misfortune. At his words, her expression darkens, and she confesses that she had no choice but to commit misdeeds to survive since childhood. Wearily, she admits that she has grown tired of this existence, and that had they not intervened she would have embraced her end without resistance. Without warning, Bisco presses a searing coal against her forehead, commanding her to abandon such foolish thoughts. Enraged, she snaps at him, demanding he get lost, declaring that she has no desire to lay eyes on his repulsive face, especially when she would much rather focus all her attention on Milo. Unfazed, Milo calmly informs her that they have food if she desires any. She offers to compensate them, but Milo gently declines, causing an unmistakable blush to creep onto her cheeks. Before long, Tyrell clambers onto the crab as well, insisting that she will lead Milo to the next railway station. Bisco, unimpressed, retorts that her assistance is unwelcome, and demands that she dismount, sparking yet another quarrel. Irritated by their endless squabbling, the crab abruptly hurls both of them to the ground. As they recover, Milo notices a settlement looming nearby. They arrive at the campsite where the locals converse in a dialect entirely unfamiliar to Bisco. Milo attempts to negotiate in fragmented speech, but the traders dismiss their currency, demanding something of tangible value instead. A few individuals begin eyeing the crab with interest, and Bisco bristles with outrage at the mere implication. Tyrell exhales in exasperation before unexpectedly addressing them in flawless snowman. She slyly informs the merchant that if he strikes a favorable deal with these two dimwits now, he can effortlessly swindle them in the future, just as she once did. Bisco, guided by his animalistic intuition, discerns her veiled mockery, yet he begrudgingly acknowledges that her ploy proves effective. In exchange for a dried eel, they secure much-needed provisions. With supplies in tow, they proceed toward the railway station, only to find the entrance encased in ice. However, this poses no challenge for Bisco, who commands his crab to shatter the frozen barrier effortlessly. As they descend into the station's depths, Bisco utilizes glow mushrooms to cast a faint luminescence, illuminating their path. Before long, he stumbles upon a series of automated trains, one of which appears to be operational. Milo attempts to operate the train only to discover that it requires pre-apocalyptic currency to function, something they sorely lack. As the two boys spiral into frantic deliberation, Tyrell sighs and orders them to step aside. Producing a toolbox, she deftly begins tinkering with the engine. She nonchalantly reveals that she once worked as a mechanic, a grueling profession, though at least the compensation was worthwhile. However, she recounts how her team was once commissioned by one of the world's largest corporations to restore an iron giant. The endeavor proved disastrous, with many perishing due to rust exposure during the project. Tyrell explains that she ultimately abandoned the profession, unwilling to sacrifice her life for it. Shrugging off any lingering regrets, she instructs Milo to give her some time while she works. Meanwhile, Milo busies himself with dinner preparation, reminiscing about the many fascinating sights he has encountered throughout his travels before shifting the conversation to Jabby. Bisco solemnly describes the old man as both his mentor and the only father figure he has ever known. Though initially a harsh instructor, Jabby gradually softened as Bisco improved. Milo reassures him that they will undoubtedly rescue him, to which Bisco resolutely adds that they will save Pa along the way as well. At that moment, Tyrell dryly inquires whether their cathartic therapy session has concluded, as she has completed her task. In response, Milo hands her a portion of food, and once they finish their meal, they decide to consult the handbook they acquired from the S-People, a compendium detailing the indigenous fauna of the northern regions. The illustrations within are peculiarly rendered. Even without glancing at them, Bisco instinctively discerns that they were sketched by a mushroom keeper. He explains that those of his kind possess a distinct artistic style, and he casually inquires whether the book also contains depictions of fungi. Milo nods in confirmation, noting that a mushroom illustration appears at the bottom of each page. Then, quite suddenly, he stumbles upon one labeled Rust Eater. Bisco instantly jolts upright upon hearing that, his eyes scanning the text intently. He exclaims that the Rust Eater mushroom thrives on an enormous airborne serpent capable of devouring helicopters in a single gulp. His exhilaration surges as this revelation aligns precisely with his prior knowledge of the elusive Saiku mushroom. Following this, they embark on the train, with Milo successfully activating it. He expresses gratitude to Tyrell, yet she promptly clarifies that she has no intention of accompanying them. prioritizing self-preservation over reckless adventure. When Milo requests her name to properly acknowledge her help, she hesitates, visibly reluctant to disclose it. In response, Milo introduces himself and Bisco first, prompting a flustered Tyrell to hesitantly reveal her own. Bisco is the first to offer thanks, but swiftly reverts to his usual demeanor, confidently declaring that fate has intertwined their paths, ensuring their reunion, albeit likely with her demise. Incensed, Tyrell fires back, retorting that it will be them who perish, and she will personally ensure Bisco is buried upside down. Milo ignites the train's engine and expresses his gratitude to Tyrell once more, assuring her that she will remain in his thoughts until their paths cross again. Flustered by his words, she attempts to voice her thanks to both Milo and Bisco, but before she can finish, the train has already departed. Meanwhile, as Milo delves deeper into the text regarding the colossal white serpent, something splatters onto the pages. He glances upward to find a viscous slime dripping from above, and Bisco instinctively fires at it. Within moments, 4 gelatinous creatures emerge beyond the window, prompting the duo to step outside and confront them. Bisco immediately unleashes a barrage of arrows, but Milo hesitates, uncertain of his own proficiency with a bow. Bisco urges him to have faith in his abilities, reminding him that he has trained him well. Resolving to support Bisco, Milo takes position at his flank. He lets loose explosive arrows at the advancing slimes, striking those that lunge toward him, yet their relentless numbers show no sign of dwindling. Bisco opts for a specialized mushroom arrow that disperses corrosive spores, rapidly dissolving the slime's gelatinous forms. A sense of relief washes over them, believing the ordeal to be over, until colossal tentacles ensnare them both. To their horror, the slime's monstrous leader remains very much alive. Bisco swiftly severs Milo from its grasp, only to be ensnared himself. The massive creature attempts to devour him. He fires a mushroom arrow into its gaping maw, yet the beast remains undeterred. Recognizing Bisco's dire predicament, Milo resorts to drastic action. He commands the crab to wrench the train engine from its frame and hurl it at the monstrous slime, creating just enough of a distraction for Bisco to break free. Milo then readies an explosive arrow, taking aim at the towering foe. But inexplicably, nerves overtake him at the thought of striking such an immobile target. In an overly theatrical gesture, Bisco clasps Milo's hands and urges him to trust in himself. Stealing his resolve, Milo looses the arrow, obliterating the monstrous slime in a fiery explosion. They arrive at the sprawling grasslands where the elusive rust-eater mushroom is said to grow. Before them stretches a colossal canyon, its rugged walls adorned with clusters of bioluminescent fungi. Bisco is convinced that these glowing mushrooms serve as remnants of the Mushroom Keeper's harvest, a trail left behind from their gathering of the rust-eater 15 years prior. Without warning, a massive sparrow swoops down in a ferocious assault, but they narrowly evade its talons. The bird ascends over the canyon, yet its flight is cut abruptly short as the enormous white serpent erupts from below, engulfing it in a single, merciless gulp. Milo and Bisco stand in stunned silence, awestruck by the sheer scale of the monstrous snake. Wasting no time, Bisco determines that this is his chance to extract the coveted rust-eater. He fires an arrow across the canyon and skillfully glides over a taut rope to the other side. He instructs Milo to attack from the opposite flank, but to his dismay his arrows prove utterly ineffective, unable to so much as scratch the serpent's armored hide. As frustration mounts, he scrambles for a new strategy, only for an entirely different crisis to unfold. Charging toward him with fiery determination is Pawo, who has ventured all the way north in pursuit of her brother. Mistakenly believing that Bisco has abducted Milo, she launches a furious assault. Bisco swiftly evades her speeding bike and fires an arrow in retaliation, but she deflects it with ease. Glaring at him, she declares that he will pay dearly for abducting her brother. Unfazed, Bisco retorts that Milo followed him of his own volition, driven by the desire to save her life. Pawo refuses to accept his words, prompting Bisco to provoke her further, jesting that he never would have guessed she was Milo's sister, given that she looks old enough to be his mother. The remark enrages the formidable woman, but just as she revs her bike's engine in fury, the massive white serpent bursts forth from the canyon once more. Pawo is momentarily paralyzed by shock, unable to react as the monstrous snake ensnares her with grotesque finger-like appendages jutting from its sides. Seizing the moment, Milo leaps onto the colossal beast's back, riding atop the crab. He calls out to Bisco, instructing him to catch Pawo, then commands the crab to drive its massive claws into the serpent's flesh. The creature lets out an eerie wail, repeatedly chanting Waimit Kai in an unnatural bellow, and in its agony releases Pawo, allowing Bisco to catch her midair. Milo descends after completing his task, but the serpent lashes out, its elongated tongue coiling around the crab in an attempt to ensnare it. Alarmed, Bisco urges Pawo to rev up her bike if she wants any hope of saving her brother. Meanwhile, Milo desperately counterattacks, attempting to neutralize the serpent's tongue with poison, but to no avail. Thinking quickly, he opts for a drastic measure, severing the crab's claw instead. Knowing it will regenerate in time, he succeeds, but as they plummet, the serpent's massive head surges toward them, its gaping maw poised to devour Milo whole. However, surrender is not in his nature. He swiftly nocks an arrow, aiming for the serpent's vulnerable insides. At that moment, a sudden powerful impact strikes the beast, violently altering its trajectory. Milo glances over to see Bisco and Pawo, now united in their efforts to save him. Bisco soars toward him, grasping his hand in midair, yet before they can escape, the serpent recoils and swallows them both. But the victory is short-lived for the monstrous creature. From within its very body, an eruption of colossal mushrooms tears its flesh apart, forcing its jaws wide open. Seizing the opportunity, Bisco and Milo drive an iron rod through its skull, triggering an even greater fungal explosion that leaves them drenched in the serpent's crimson ichor. Using a towering mushroom as a makeshift slingshot, they propel themselves toward safety, where the crab intercepts them just as the behemoth crashes lifelessly to the ground. Milo and Pawo share an emotional reunion, and together the group descends to examine the legendary Sobek mushrooms flourishing across the fallen serpent's body. However, Bisco thinks something is odd. He picks a mushroom and starts eating it, only to learn that it looks and tastes just like a common mushroom. He says they should hunt another prey to have a better chance at discovering the rust eater, but Milo stops him, telling him that he is in no shape to fight. Bisco just pushes him away because he can't waste time, but just then, Milo notices the mushroom glowing as it comes in contact with Bisco's blood. He realizes that this is the secret to awakening its power. Milo asks him about his blood type, but Bisco doesn't even know what a blood type is. That shocks Milo, but then he realizes that even Jabby had the same response when he treated him in the city. He understands that there must be something special about mushroom keeper blood. As Milo is busy treating Bisco and researching the rust eater, Pawo begins to think that maybe mushroom keepers are not bad people after all. She resolves to repair her bike in the meantime, but as she steps outside, she is astounded to witness a colossal whale-shaped helicarrier hovering over the canyon, launching harpoons at the massive serpent. Mill and Bisco rush out as well, quickly realizing that the helicarrier belongs to Kuro, who had been tailing W to ensure she eliminated Bisco. Without hesitation, Bisco fires a mushroom arrow at the airborne vessel, yet the fungi decay instantly upon sprouting. The pilot retaliates with relentless gunfire, but Bisco deftly evades the assault, ascending to the ship's altitude and loosing another arrow into its interior. However, Kuro anticipates this maneuver and counters by shooting Bisco with a specialized rust bullet before seizing the serpent's remains and retreating into the sky. At dawn, Pawo makes the decision to return to Amama, carrying a batch of medicine derived from the rust eater to treat Jabby. She abstains from taking the remedy herself, choosing instead to conceal the crucial fact that Sabitu mushrooms require mushroom keeper blood to activate. Instead, she entrusts the medicine to Bisco, whose body has already begun succumbing to rust, as he alone possesses the strength to confront Puro. In a sudden shift of demeanor, she leans in flirtatiously, teasing him playfully, causing the inexperienced Bisco to flush crimson in embarrassment. Pawo departs for Amama but encounters a brainwashed soldier stationed at one of the security checkpoints who immediately launches an attack against her. With swift precision, she subdues him, only for Kuro to arrive moments later, flanked by his guards. He demands Pawo's compliance, revealing that he has the aged Jabby in his custody. Meanwhile, Bisco and Milo attempt to take things slow while Bisco's wounds mend. However, his untamed spirit remains unchecked as he gleefully romps through the swamps alongside the crab. One afternoon, as Milo busies himself preparing dinner at their hideout, the television abruptly flickers to life on its own. To his horror, a broadcast from Kuro appears, displaying Pawo as his captive. Kuro coldly demands that Milo and Bisco surrender themselves if they wish for her survival. A wave of devastation washes over Milo, leaving him paralyzed with dread. When Bisco returns, he finds Milo standing motionless, overwhelmed by fear. Acting on instinct, Bisco samples the stew Milo had been cooking, immediately discerning the presence of a sleeping mushroom toxin. In an instant, he deduces that Milo is attempting to deceive him, an act driven by Pawo's peril. Without hesitation, Bisco resolves to embark on a mission to rescue her at once. Milo desperately attempts to halt Bisco, insisting that his wounds are far from healed, yet when his pleas fall on deaf ears, he raises his bow, his resolve unwavering. He knows all too well that Bisco's condition is dire, perhaps even more so than Pawo's W's or Jabby's. If he charges into battle in this state, he will not survive. With firm conviction, Milo declares that he refuses to let his friend die. In response, Bisco retorts that he refuses to let his friend's beautiful sister perish. He orders Milo to stand aside, but when he refuses, Milo releases an arrow. Bisco swiftly evades the shot and retaliates with a decisive blow, knocking Milo to the ground. However, in that fleeting moment, Milo covertly injects him with a potent sedative. As Bisco collapses, his consciousness slipping away, Milo, despite his own injuries, breaks into tears. With quiet determination, he vows that this time he will be the one to shield Bisco from unnecessary harm and will rescue both Powwow and Jabby himself. Elsewhere, Kuro engages in a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Against a brainwashed soldier who can do little more than rant about his defeat. Irritated, Kuro shoves him aside in frustration. Just then, the door bursts open and Milo storms in, bow drawn and trained directly on him. Milo vividly recalls the torment Kuro inflicted upon Powwow in the recorded message. The sadistic tyrant had demanded Bisco's lifeless body along with the formula for crafting the rust-curing medicine. Despite her dire predicament, Powwow had defiantly resisted, scoffing at Kuro's threats. She declared that he would never lay a finger on Bisco because the red-headed warrior would storm in and annihilate them all. Enraged by her defiance, Kuro intensified his torture, shattering Milo's resolve. But now, standing before him, Milo refuses to falter. With unwavering determination, he demands that Kuro disclose Powwow's whereabouts. However, the villain remains unfazed, countering with his own demand. Milo must first divulge the secret of converting rust-eater mushrooms into medicine. Feigning compliance, Milo instructs him to procure a batch of rust-eaters so he can demonstrate the process. Kuro obliges, sending one of his mindless thralls to retrieve a basket of the prized fungi. As the specimen is delivered, Milo explains that additional compounds are required for transformation. Retrieving several vials from his satchel, he begins mixing them with calculated precision. His voice steady as he speaks, Kuro discerns the truth a fraction too late. It's a potent mushroom spore. In an instant, the chamber is engulfed in a dense veil of pink smoke. Seizing the opportunity, Milo swiftly incapacitates the guards before slashing Kuro with a poison-laced dagger. With an icy resolve, he warns him if he values his life, he must reveal Powwow's whereabouts immediately. But before Milo can press further, a sudden sting of pain erupts in his side. Kuro has fired a concealed crossbow, embedding an arrow deep into him. Without hesitation, he administers an antidote, neutralizing the poison in his bloodstream within moments. Staggering, Milo demands to know how he could possibly do that. Kuro smirks, his voice laced with dark amusement. He was once a mushroom keeper too. Milo lunges to strike again, but his body locks in place mid-motion. A sinister realization dawns as Kuro elaborates. His arrow was no ordinary projectile. It bore the puppet rune, a malevolent sigil that subjugates its victim through a neural link implant. With a self-satisfied grin, Kuro boasts of his ingenuity, declaring that he alone devised this extraordinary technique, yet instead of reverence, the mushroom keepers branded him an abomination and exiled him. Kuro then warns Milo that he can compel him to perform self-termination at this very moment, but first he requires the formula for the rust-curing elixir. Yet, despite both coercion and tempting offers, Milo remains resolute in his silence. Enraged by his defiance, Kuro resolves to dispatch him to the afterlife. Just then, the doors explode inward as Bisco storms in to turn the tide. Kuro smirks, claiming he has been eagerly anticipating his arrival. But Bisco remains utterly indifferent. Offended by the blatant disregard, Kuro demands that Bisco acknowledge him. After all, he is the one who meticulously orchestrated the smear campaign against mushroom keepers, ensuring they were hunted while he alone prospered. Bisco, unfazed, merely remarks that this revelation will make his vengeance all the more satisfying. Without hesitation, Kuro raises his crossbow, but before he can fire, Bisco obliterates his arm with a well-placed shot. Certain the battle is won, he lowers his guard, only for Kuro to trigger his control over Milo, forcing him to unleash a volley of venom-tipped arrows at Bisco. Milo pleads with Kuro to spare Bisco's life, offering a crucial revelation in return. Mushroom keeper blood is essential to unlocking the latent powers of the S-mushroom. Kuro, delighted by this newfound knowledge, expresses his gratitude, declaring that as a token of appreciation he will grant Bisco a swift and painless demise with a precise shot to the brain. Milo desperately implores Kuro to relent, but as his gaze locks onto Bisco's unwavering, resolute eyes, he realizes he has a plan and shoots anyway. Bisco grabs the arrow with his teeth and then spits it right at Kuro, piercing his eye. The furious Kuro tries taking down both Bisco and Milo with him, but a mushroom arrow takes away his controller and slams him into the roof. Bisco recognizes those mushrooms, and as he turns around he finds that it was Jabby who rescued them. Jabby then heals Milo to free him from the brainwashing and says that no matter how wicked the techniques Kuro uses, he was no match for his mushroom control, even in the past. The old man then tells Bisco and Milo that he was biding his time in the prison cell, acting senile to distract the guard outside. He asked for food and the guard threw him a dead rat, but as the guard got distracted by a phone call, he grew a special acidic mushroom on the rat's body that melted the bars. He also rescued Powwow on the way and told her to get to safety while he took care of a few more things. That was when he heard the explosions and came here to check things out. After that, the three men get outside the building, but Kuro's goons surround them. Bisco's knees are seriously injured and he can't fight, so Jabby asks Milo to take him to safety and treat him while he stays back to fight. Milo runs as fast as he can while carrying Bisco, but Kuro's mind-controlled goons catch up to him and start shooting rust arrows. The rust disease spreads quickly through Milo's body, and he is about to collapse when the crab emerges from the snowy ground and knocks down all the goons. However, Milo has taken too much damage now, and he slowly starts losing consciousness while still worrying about Bisco. Milo dreams that Bisco, Jabi, and Pawu are enjoying a picnic in the lush grasslands, but the harder he tries to reach them, the farther away they get from him. He wakes up with a jolt as the dream ends and Bisco comforts him. He says that he has just finished bandaging him, and Milo finds that he has been blindfolded and the rust disease has spread all over his body. Bisco treats him gently, saying that he stole some rust eater from Kuro's place and then followed the instructions penned down by Milo to create a medicine from it. Milo tells him to take the medicine himself first, but Bisco lies that he has already done so. He places Milo's hand on the part of his body that has not rusted yet to make him believe the lie, and then injects him with the medicine. Milo starts making small talk with Bisco, apologizing for rushing in on his own, but Bisco understands his desperation. He then tries to set up Bisco with his sister because he ships them together, but Bisco grows flustered because he doesn't want to date such a violent girl. Milo just laughs and then tells Bisco about the peaceful dream he had. He asks Bisco to stay next to him while he gets better, and Bisco holds his hand until he falls asleep. After Milo falls asleep, Bisco realizes how Jabi must have felt while raising him and why he was willing to risk his life to protect him. He then rides his crab to fight Kuro, prepared to lose his life for his first ever friend. At the same time, Pawu is escaping from the city to find Bisco and Milo when she suddenly sees some military trucks heading toward Kuro's base. At the base, Kuro leads the captured Jabi inside, telling him about his new evil plans. He says that the rust wind blowing through the country has become really weak, and that new cases of the rust disease are decreasing. That is not good for his business, which is why he's trying to artificially create rust wind and infect more people. Jabi doesn't understand how he can do that, but when he sees the body of an iron giant in a pool of molten rust, he understands everything. Kuro says that a long time ago, these iron giants were the origin of the rust disease, and though all of them are broken down now, he found one that still has an intact rust generator engine. He plans to use its power to create giant rust bullets and fire them around the country to spread rust quickly. Jabi is horrified by this idea, and Kuro says that he will fire one bullet at the valley where the giant white snake is found so that no more saku mushrooms can be created. He threatens to fire the bullets at the village of mushroom keepers as well, but says that he will not do so if Jabi works with him and sends a few young mushroom keepers so he can use their blood to create medicine. Jabi suddenly headbutts him and says that a pathetic wimp like him can only make empty threats because he doesn't have the guts to do anything. Kuro is furious and points his gun at him, but then one of his masked guards attacks Jabi and knocks him down. Kuro tells the guard not to kill him but to cut off his fingers so that he can never fire an arrow again. He then once again offers Jabi a chance to work for him, but the old man tells him to kiss his ass. Kuro orders the guard to cut Jabi's hand off, but instead, the guard shatters the chains and then stabs Kuro's feet. Kuro cries out in pain and pulls off the mask to learn that it was Bisco who had snuck inside his building. Bisco grabs Kuro and throws him down into the molten rust pool, but Kuro hits a bridge instead. Bisco then tells Jabi to go and deal with the facility and the giant cannon that Kuro plans to use to fire the rust bullets while he goes down to deal with the root of all problems himself. He removes his coat and Jabi is horrified to see the rust spreading on his body. He warns Bisco that engaging Kuro in his current state is reckless, yet Bisco implores him to trust his most adept student. Meanwhile, Jabi steps outside to halt the colossal elephant cannon, only to be ambushed by a gorilla boxer. Fortunately, Pawu arrives in the nick of time, repelling the beast with a powerful strike from her iron pole. Elsewhere, Bisco descends to confront Kuro, who despite his earlier bravado is visibly quaking in fear. He frantically orders his subordinates to unleash their trump card and fires a shot, striking Bisco's eye. However, sheer terror grips him upon witnessing Bisco's unrelenting fury. Suddenly, a massive berserker crashes through the ceiling while its handler plummets into the molten rust below. Kuro erupts into laughter, reveling in the arrival of his ultimate weapon, and commands the brute to annihilate Bisco. The monstrous warrior unleashes cannon blasts that veer wildly off target before lunging at Bisco, forcing him backward. Unfazed, Bisco retaliates by launching arrows into the brute's feet, triggering the growth of iron mushrooms. The structure beneath them crumbles, sending the berserker plunging into the molten abyss. Now only Kuro remains. Bisco takes aim, but as he releases the arrow, it strays off course. His fingers have disintegrated under the relentless corrosion of the rust. Kuro cackles, convinced of his victory, until Bisco lunges at him, delivering a crushing blow while declaring he needs no arrows to end him. Panic-stricken, Kuro flees, with Bisco pursuing at a measured pace, cutting down his brainwashed thralls along the way. Even as Kuro's bullets tear into him, Bisco refuses to falter. With one final devastating punch, he shatters his own rusted arm against Kuro's face. Exhausted and on the brink, Bisco watches as Kuro levels his gun, ready to finish him off. But before he can pull the trigger, an arrow soars in, severing his prosthetic hand. Milo arrives at the perfect moment. Seizing the opportunity, Bisco sinks his teeth into Kuro's neck and drags him into the seething pool of molten rust. He forces Kuro under before feeling himself begin to descend as well. Milo rushes forward, desperate, demanding how Bisco could throw his life away after promising to stay by his side. He pleads, admitting he cannot bear the loneliness, but Bisco merely tosses his bow to him. He assures Milo that even if his body perishes, his spirit will endure, that he will return from the grave to watch over him. With his final breath, he entrusts Milo with a grim request, to end him before the rust can. Tears welling in his eyes, Milo asks Bisco if they will reunite in the afterlife someday. Bisco gives a resolute affirmation, and with a heavy heart, Milo fires a shot straight into his chest. Bisco tumbles into the molten rust, vanishing beneath its searing depths. Suddenly, the facility spirals into chaos, its systems failing from the extensive damage. A ruptured pipeline begins channeling molten rust into the colossal elephant cannon, priming it to unleash devastation upon the Valley of the Giant Snake. Meanwhile, Pawu and Jabi remain locked in combat against the relentless guerrilla boxers. Spotting the imminent catastrophe, Pawu seizes one of the beasts and hurls it with tremendous force, toppling the cannon before it can fire. Moments later, a series of explosions rip through the facility as the bunny-masked underlings flee in terror, shouting that Kuro has perished. Jabi, grasping the situation, realizes Bisco has completed his mission. As the inferno engulfs the structure, Pawu dashes inside, determined to reach Bisco before it's too late. She searches frantically but finds no trace of him. Suddenly, debris crashes from above, threatening to engulf her in molten rust. But Milo reacts instantly, shielding her with a burst of mushrooms. Without hesitation, they flee the crumbling facility. The moment Jabi spots Milo, he urgently inquires about Bisco's whereabouts. A somber expression crosses Milo's face as he recalls his loss. Then he quietly states that Bisco now lives only within his heart. Jabi immediately grasps the painful truth. Moments later, the building succumbs to destruction, collapsing into smoldering ruins. Rescue teams from the city arrive, scouring the wreckage for survivors, but the pervasive rust renders their efforts futile. Milo, gripped by longing, wishes for just one more glimpse of Bisco. Then, without warning, a colossal hand bursts forth from the rubble, crushing a helicopter in its grasp. Everyone is left in stunned silence as the resurrected Iron Giant stirs to life, its skeletal frame cloaked in molten rust. The sight is beyond comprehension. Without warning, the behemoth unleashes a blast skyward, and the projectile crashes into the distant valley, triggering a cataclysmic explosion. Jabi and Milo reel in horror. Such an onslaught must have incinerated every last sack mushroom in the region. Yet there is no time to grieve. A greater threat looms. The tanks retaliate, bombarding the Iron Giant with relentless firepower, but their efforts prove futile. In response, the Colossus spews torrents of molten rust, engulfing the battlefield in a suffocating layer of decay. Mel and his comrades take cover in the trenches, and as the Iron Giant strides away, they notice their crab buried beneath the corrosion. Jabi reassures them that the creature is impervious to rust, but freeing it will require considerable effort. Determined, Milo urges Jabi to excavate the crab while he confronts the Iron Giant. Pawu intervenes, warning him of the sheer folly of facing such an overwhelming force alone. But Milo stands resolute. He is not alone. Bisco is always with him. Meanwhile, Tyrell continues to wander aimlessly, striving to uphold the role of a proper merchant. As she approaches a checkpoint, lost in thoughts of Bisco and Milo, a soldier, one of Kuro's brainwashed pawns, unexpectedly stumbles onto the scene. Tyrell recoils at the grotesque sight of the fungus sprouting from his head, but with Kuro's demise, the parasitic growth detaches and falls away. The soldiers, now free from his influence, are left bewildered, struggling to grasp their abrupt liberation. Just then, one of Kuro's helicopters descends to refuel. The soldiers demand an explanation, their voices laced with urgency, and the anxious crew reveals the grim truth. Kuro and Bisco annihilated each other, and in the aftermath, a terrifying weapon was unleashed. Tyrell furrows her brows, trying to make sense of their words, when suddenly, a deep, earth-shaking thud reaches her ears, the unmistakable footfalls of the Iron Giant. The monstrous colossus is being lured by two helicopters toward a remote military outpost where the army has prepared a final stand. Heavy artillery roars to life, unleashing a relentless barrage, yet the Iron Giant remains unscathed. With ruthless efficiency, it retaliates, decimating the entire fleet within moments, obliterating everything in its path with searing laser beams and cascades of molten rust. The Iron Giant lumbers southward, its voice echoing with Bisco's name as it advances toward Imahama. Meanwhile, it arrives at the settlement of the Snowman merchants, still chanting Bisco's name like a broken incantation. Just as it prepares to unleash devastation upon the village, Milo suddenly appears, his voice ringing through the air as he calls the Colossus by a different name, Kuro. He has uncovered the grim truth. Kuro's consciousness now resides within the Iron Giant. Milo mocks him, sneering that while his body may have grown immense, his mind remains as minuscule as a rat's. Enraged, Kuro fires a searing laser, obliterating the hill where Milo once stood, but Milo evades effortlessly, launching a mushroom arrow in retaliation. The Iron Giant strikes relentlessly, yet Milo, having just ingested the Rust-Eater medicine, remains unharmed. He unleashes a barrage of mushroom arrows, and soon the snowmen rally to his side, joining the fray. Shifting focus, Kuro turns his wrath upon them, nearly wiping them out in a single onslaught. But before he can finish them off, Jabi charges in atop his colossal crab, diverting Kuro's attention. He shouts for Milo to keep firing. The mushrooms must overtake the Iron Giant. Together they unleash a relentless assault while weaving through Kuro's ferocious counterattacks, but their offensive proves insufficient. Kuro barely flinches then, with a sudden guttural roar. He unleashes his most devastating attack yet, engulfing the battlefield in an earth-shattering explosion. Just in time, Milo and Jabi hurl themselves over a cliff's edge, narrowly escaping annihilation. Meanwhile, Tyrell speeds toward the battlefield in her miniature truck, ferrying Pawu with her. She insists that she can contribute to the fight against the Iron Giant, revealing that she was once involved in a project to restore one. As proof, she even possesses a maintenance manual. However, as Pawu flips through the pages, the dense technical jargon leaves her baffled. Tyrell scoffs, calling her an idiot, while Pawu retorts that her skepticism remains. Despite Tyrell's claims of being Milo's friend, she still doesn't fully trust her. Back on the battlefield, Milo and Jabi survive the explosion, their fall cushioned by the thick snow. However, Jabi's old wounds have reopened. As Milo tends to him, Jabi's thoughts drift to the enigmatic nature of the Iron Giant. He muses about the true purpose behind its creation before shifting the conversation to Rust itself. He confesses that its origins remain a mystery to him, likening it to a death god, an unstoppable force that devours everything in its wake. Milo contemplates his words, then counters with an intriguing perspective. If Rust is akin to a god of death, then mushrooms are god slayers, having evolved to eradicate it. At that moment the snowmen arrive, and Milo entrusts Jabi to their care, knowing the old man is too injured to continue. Resolute, he sets his sights on stopping Kuro before he can reach Imahama, mounting the crab as he charges into pursuit. Meanwhile, the snowmen make a desperate attempt to hinder Kuro's advance, but their efforts prove futile as they are swiftly engulfed in layers of corrosive rust. Soon, Kuro looms over the children's village, and sheer panic spreads among its inhabitants as they grasp the grim reality. They stand no chance against such an unstoppable force. Their leader, Nuts, makes a decisive call. They must abandon the village to ensure their survival. However, Kuro takes notice after razing their home to the ground. Determined to buy time, Nuts orders the others to flee while he stays behind as a decoy. With unwavering resolve, he charges toward Kuro, hurling his harpoon into the Colossus's metallic frame in a desperate bid for distraction. But Kuro retaliates with a searing laser blast. At the last moment, Milo arrives, deploying a specialized mushroom to shield Nuts and deflect the lethal beam. Standing his ground, Milo challenges Kuro, insisting that he face an opponent of equal caliber. Another laser barrage erupts, but Milo counters effortlessly, using the same mushroom to nullify the attack. He bombards Kuro's enormous frame with a relentless storm of mushroom arrows, weaving through his monstrous strikes. Meanwhile, the children manage to escape, but Milo soon finds himself ensnared. Just as Kuro prepares to obliterate him, a helicopter descends from the sky. From it, Pawu leaps out, her ironclad resolve manifesting as she delivers a devastating strike to Kuro's head with her full strength. At that moment, Tyrell and Jabi arrive, catching Milo off guard. The Imahama guards have also mobilized, bringing the full force of their military arsenal. They unleash a relentless bombardment upon Kuro, forcing him to alter his course. Under the relentless onslaught, Kuro momentarily falters, until he unveils a devastating hidden weapon. He wrenches his own ribs apart, revealing a massive fan embedded within his chest. With a single rotation, he generates a cataclysmic rust storm, reducing everything in its wake to corroded ruin. Milo and his allies barely withstand the assault, but Pawu is rendered incapable of fighting. Realizing the dire situation, Milo entrusts Jabi with her care before taking drastic action. He injects himself with a potent mushroom toxin, temporarily amplifying his strength to superhuman levels. Meanwhile, Kuro reaches the outskirts of Imahama, and sheer hysteria grips the populace as they witness the destruction unfold in real time. The city's guards mount a desperate defense, opening fire in an attempt to slow him down, but their efforts are woefully ineffective. Then, Milo arrives and fires a precise shot at Kuro, drawing the Iron Giant's attention. Seizing the moment, he launches a ferocious offensive, nimbly evading Kuro's lethal counterattacks. However, in the midst of the relentless clash, Kuro lands a devastating blow, sending Milo hurtling to the ground. The crab is now inoperable, yet Milo remains resolute, his body surging with unnatural vitality from the mushroom extract coursing through his veins. Though his movements grow erratic, his sheer willpower drives him forward in his relentless battle against Kuro. Utilizing mushrooms to propel himself, he leaps onto Kuro's towering frame, scaling it despite his failing condition. Summoning every ounce of his remaining strength, he plunges his weapon deep into Kuro's metallic flesh, carving grievous wounds that elicit an agonized roar. For a moment, Kuro freezes in place, and Milo dares to believe that victory is within reach. As he scans the rust-laden battlefield, his eyes catch a familiar glint, Bisco's goggles half buried in the corroded debris. With trembling hands he retrieves them, whispering Bisco's name. But before he can react, Kuro's colossal hand seizes him, slamming him mercilessly against the wall. Milo collapses, his body battered and broken. Then, in an unforeseen twist, movement stirs within Kuro's wounds. A hand emerges from the gashes Milo inflicted. Against all odds, it is Bisco, fully restored, tearing his way out from within the Iron Giant's body. Without hesitation, he dashes toward Milo, his voice filled with unwavering resolve. "I heard you calling," he says, "and I came running." Bisco retrieves his goggles with his radiant hand, slipping them on as he steels himself for the final confrontation. He extends a hand to Milo, pulling him to his feet. "Did you call for me?" he asks, only for Milo to instinctively throw his arms around him in relief. A moment later, Milo recoils, exclaiming that Bisco is burning hot. Bisco smirks. "This isn't the time for flirting." Milo then points to Bisco's glowing hand, and for the first time, Bisco notices it himself. Before he can fully process it, Kuro launches a ferocious strike. They narrowly evade his colossal fist, leaping out of harm's way. Seizing the moment, Milo tosses Bisco's bow to him. With unwavering precision, Bisco knocks an arrow and fires it straight through Kuro's waist, piercing him cleanly. As the arrow finds its mark, his hand momentarily returns to normal, only for rust-eater mushrooms to sprout in abundance across Kuro's back. From the sidelines, Jabi and Pawu stare in astonishment. Not only is Bisco alive, but he now wields the power to unleash fully activated rust-eater mushrooms with his arrows. As Bisco and Milo land gracefully, Kuro lunges once more, but this time Bisco counters with a decisive strike. He fires a single perfectly aimed arrow, cutting through Kuro's laser beam and rending the Iron Giant in two. Bisco is utterly bewildered. No matter what arrow he fires, only rust-eaters sprout, and he has no control over it. Milo observes the spores drifting from Bisco's hands and quickly recognizes them as Sabi mushroom spores. This can mean only one thing. Bisco is now half human, half rust-eater. Before they can process this revelation, Kuro sheds the upper half of his armor, emerging as a grotesque, towering monstrosity. Without hesitation, Bisco resolves to end him once and for all. Milo insists on joining the fight. In response, Bisco hands Milo his bow, and Jabi, without missing a beat, offers his own bow to Bisco. Mounting their crab, they charge toward Kuro. As they close the distance, Milo explains his theory. When Bisco was earlier drenched in the white snake's blood, the rust-eater spores must have entered his body. Then, after being submerged in concentrated molten rust, those spores awakened. Bisco, however, isn't concerned with the details. "I'll leave the science to you," he says with a grin. "I'll just focus on shooting." Bisco knocks an arrow, ready to strike, but before he can release it, the rust giant surges upward, growing even larger. At that moment, Tyrell speeds onto the battlefield, screaming for him to stop. She warns that the Iron Giant has entered self-destruct mode. If Bisco fires now, the resulting explosion will annihilate the entire city. Frustrated, Bisco demands to know what the hell he's supposed to do instead. Before Tyrell can answer, Kuro spews a wave of molten rust at them. Reacting instantly, Bisco fires an arrow at the ground, and a towering wall of rust-eater mushrooms erupts, shielding them from the attack. Meanwhile, Tyrell frantically flips through the repair manual, desperate for a solution. Her eyes widen as she finds the only way to stop the self-destruction: destroy the pilot's brain, which is safeguarded within the helmet. Bisco readies his arrow, saying he'll just shoot through the helmet, but Milo quickly stops him, pointing out that the helmet is massive. Kuro could be anywhere inside. If he misses and triggers an explosion, all of Imahama will be wiped out. Pawu steps forward, declaring that she'll handle it with her merciful iron pole technique, which will split the helmet cleanly and minimize any shockwaves. Bisco scoffs, saying it's peak arrogance to call the technique merciful when she nearly shattered every bone in his body earlier. As Pawu walks up to him, she smirks and tells him he could be a little nicer, considering she's risking her life for him. Bisco shifts uncomfortably as she gets closer. With a sigh, he mutters that if she survives, he'll give her anything she wants. Without warning, Pawu grabs him and kisses him, calling it her advance payment because once this is over, she's taking him. Bisco turns bright red while Milo immediately starts calling him brother-in-law, much to his embarrassment. Meanwhile, Tyrell crosses her arms and announces that she's done everything she can. She's out of here. Milo thanks her, and she blushes slightly, muttering that it's only natural to help her friends. Without another word, she speeds away, leaving the rest of the team to execute their plan. Jabi gives the order, and the crab catapults Pawu straight toward the Iron Giant. She dodges a barrage of laser beams before slamming her iron pole into its head. Kuro retaliates with a massive swipe, sending her flying, but Bisco fires parachute mushrooms at her weapon, slowing her descent. In that split second, the helmet fractures, revealing Kuro fused right in the center of the Iron Giant's head. Bisco takes aim, but before he can fire, Kuro unleashes a swarm of rust bombs to deflect the arrow and strike back. Anticipating the attack, Milo quickly shoots arrows at the ground, preparing for the next move. Kuro lets out a furious scream, cursing Bisco and declaring that he'll never be able to defeat him. He lunges forward, but at that exact moment, the mushroom arrows Milo planted earlier suddenly sprout, launching both Kuro and Bisco high into the sky. Bisco quickly takes aim, but Kuro hurls a blast of rust directly at his face, blinding him. For a brief second, Bisco hesitates, until Milo reaches out, grabbing his hand and telling him to trust himself. With newfound resolve, Bisco releases the arrow. The shot flies straight through Kuro's head and continues past him, striking the desert behind. Instantly, rust-eater mushrooms explode from the impact, their spores spreading like wildfire. The fungi engulf Kuro's massive form, growing uncontrollably and crushing him from every direction. As the battle ends, the rust dissolves from the Iron Giant's body, leaving behind nothing but its bare steel frame. As the morning sun rises, the battle finally comes to an end. Jabi and Pawu, now miraculously cured of their rusting, scan the battlefield and spot Bisco and Milo resting atop the massive pile of mushrooms. Jabi calls out to Bisco, but Pawu stops him, smiling knowingly. She tells him to give them a moment. She's certain her brother is having an important conversation with his best friend. Atop the mushroom-covered ruins, Milo clings to Bisco, thanking him for surviving and pleading with him never to leave his side again. Bisco returns the hug, assuring Milo that they will always be together as partners until the very end. With their bond reaffirmed, they descend to the city below, where a new era begins. Milo starts using the sabikui mushroom to cure the people of Imahama, while Tyrell loads up a truck with the valuable fungi, eager to make a fortune elsewhere. Meanwhile, Pawu takes charge as the new governor, declaring Imahama's independence from the Japanese government. She announces that mushroom keepers are now welcome in her city, and soon the news spreads across the entire country. Meanwhile, Bisco and Milo embark on a new journey, retracing their steps to the very checkpoint where their adventure first began. Disguised, they approach the familiar officer and his assistant, who present them with wanted posters. Now, Milo has joined Bisco in notoriety, branded as the man-eating panda. However, the officer no longer sees them as criminals. He glances at their documents, then silently waves them through the wall. Before leaving, Bisco slips 2 vials of rust-eater medicine into the officer's pocket. The man panics, insisting that he can't accept a bribe, but Bisco smirks and tells him it's not a bribe, it's a reward for seeing him differently. The officer is left bewildered as Bisco and Milo dramatically shed their disguises. Their crab erupts from the sand, ready to carry them forward. Realizing who they are, the officer frantically calls his assistant, who scrambles to take pictures. But it's too late. By then, Bisco and Milo are already vanishing into the horizon, determined to rid the entire country of rust, one step at a time. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Show your support, and we'll see you next time.